Welcome to a special Thursday edition of If This Car Could Talk. We like to occasionally produce an informative video the Thursday after we run a feature of a vehicle where there isn't much information available, but a vehicle that does certainly deserve to learn more about. Now, let's go for a ride. The evolution of today's modern van is an interesting story. In my opinion, the most intriguing and important part of that history occurred during the 1960s when all three auto manufacturers got into the game. The Volkswagen brand had begun to establish a dealer network in the United States after World War II, and these simple to operate and simple to maintain air-cooled wonders soon gained reputation and an endearment with the American public. One of their offerings was a transporter bus and a similarly styled pickup truck. Because their engines were rear-mounted, a smaller truck was built, but it was one with an increased cargo capacity. Prior to the VW trucks, American manufacturers had been building trucks since the early 1900s. These pickup trucks, as they'd become known along with their panel truck cousins, were well suited for their daily tasks, but their sheer size limited their access to many delivery sites. Even though sedan deliveries were also available from the late 1920s through the 1960s, their load capacity was limited. Because all of these vehicles had their engines in the front under a long hood, increasing capacity meant the trucks got larger and were oftentimes unable to easily negotiate their delivery stops. The marketing people at the Big Three took notice and realized that the VW transporters and trucks were able to negotiate tight and narrow streets and alleyways while carrying much larger loads. Ford was the first to release the first generation Ford Econoline on September 21, 1960, for the 1961 model year. Development began in 1957, and the intent was to offer a series of trucks that were to replace F-Series based panel trucks and the smaller courier sedan deliveries. Three models were available: a cargo van, a passenger van sold under the station bus or club wagon names, and a pickup truck. To accommodate its nimble 90-inch wheelbase, the Econoline adopted a groundbreaking mid-engine configuration, which places the engine behind the front axle and the passengers above the axle with the engine between the seats. In contrast to the Falcon, the Econoline was fitted with a solid front axle and a solid rear axle suspension with leaf springs for all four wheels. Consequently, this layout did not allow the use of any Ford V8 engine available at the time. They would all be based on the new for 1960 Ford Falcon, using many common mechanical components like drivetrains and other parts to keep production costs down. The key to increased cargo capacity in a smaller truck is to have the engine mounted mid-vehicle. To improve cargo access by creating a flat floor and utilizing larger side and rear doors was the net result of this particular configuration. The Econoline established several design precedents adopted by all other manufacturers, but specifically the Chevrolet C-Series vans and the Dodge A100s. The Econoline was initially powered by an 85 horsepower, 144 cubic inch inline six, which was also the standard engine of both the Falcon and the Comet. A 170 cubic inch inline six put out 101 horsepower and was introduced that first year as an option. By 1965, the 170 became standard with a 240 cubic inch engine introduced as an option. A 3-speed manual was the only transmission until a 3-speed automatic was offered in 1964. Surprisingly, a Dagenham 4-speed manual transmission was briefly available during the 1963 model year. This same year, General Motors also saw a huge demand for smaller and more economical cars and trucks. They began selling the very popular rear-engined Corvair, which during the decade-long availability would move out 1.8 million units and be offered in many different configurations and models. When Chevrolet noticed the popularity of the Ford Econoline and the VW trucks to a lesser extent, they quickly developed the Greenbrier series of trucks and vans to compete. All were known as the Corvair 95 series because they rode on a 95-inch wheelbase. All were produced for the model years 1961 to 1965. The air-cooled, horizontally opposed Chevrolet Turbo Air 6-cylinder engine was located in the rear of these trucks, just like their passenger car counterparts. The cargo floor was slightly raised. All this was similar in principle to the 4-cylinder engine of the Volkswagen, with the 145 cubic inch engine developing 80 horsepower at 4,400 RPM. Displacement was increased to 164 cubic inches for the 1964 model year, raising output to 95 horsepower. All were standard with a 3-speed manual, but could also be ordered with a 2-speed Corvair Powerglide automatic transmission. There were essentially two different bodies available in the 95 series, the van and the truck. The base version was the panel van, also called the Corvan, with no side or rear windows. These vans were all dubbed Greenbrier. The Greenbrier normally had windows all around and 6 doors, although an option was to have 8 doors, where they were opening double doors on both sides. The Greenbrier could comfortably seat up to 9 people if configured with the 3rd row seat. Toward the end of the model availability, the Greenbrier also had a camper option. A Corvair truck could be ordered as a load side or a ramp side. The load side was essentially a pickup truck with a standard tailgate. The load side was only produced 2 years and is the rarest of the Corvairs. The ramp side had a side ramp for loading and unloading cargo. These were most often used by the Bell Telephone Company because transporting cable drums was eased by the side ramp. Finally, Dodge also needed to bring a van and a light-duty truck to market, which they finally did in 1964, calling it the A100 because of its 100-inch wheelbase. In Canada, these trucks were sold under the Fargo mark, but were also designated as A100. In 1967, a longer wheelbase van was introduced as the A108. 1970 would be the final year for these cool little trucks, but all 3 companies were now marketing vans, and finding them to be quite popular as not only business-related haulers, but personal use vehicles as well. All 3 companies used what was known as the forward control design, called a cab over engine, cab forward, or flat nose. Forward control is a body style of truck, bus, or van that has a vertical front, flat face, or a semi-hood, with the cab of the truck sitting above the solid front axle. This configuration placed the vehicle's engine between the seats and increased the vehicle's cargo capacity in a more compact design. The focus of this retrospective is the first generation of the Chevrolet van, immediately following the successful Corvair offerings. This series of vans were dubbed the G Series, a compact model available from 1964 through 1970. All were assembled in Pontiac, Michigan. The first generation was produced from 1964 to 1966, and all were half-ton models. In its inaugural year, this G10 van was only available as a panel. GM kept production costs down by using major components from the Corvair and the Chevy 2. Initial sales were promising, so further development was carried on. The first generation vans were available exclusively on the short 90-inch wheelbase and were equipped with the standard 153 cubic inch 90 horsepower straight 4-cylinder or a 194 cubic inch Chevrolet straight 6 engine. The first generation is easily identified by its single-piece flat windshield. The first 1964 Chevrolet van was originally marketed and sold as a panel van for purely utilitarian purposes. Windows were available as an option, but were simply cut into the sides at the factory. Amenities such as power brakes, power steering, and air conditioning were not available. This new van was of simple construction, and its box shape was designed to maximize the hauling of cargo, tools, and equipment. The base cargo model was known as the Chevy van, available with or without side windows and side cargo doors. Basic amenities could be optioned such as Powerglide transmission, a heater, and front passenger seat, but they were still used mostly for commercial purposes. The 1965 model year included minor changes. The grille openings were widened and received one additional slot just above the bumper to increase cooling. Seat belts were added. This same year, the Sport Van was introduced in 3 distinct series: the Sport Van, the Custom Sport Van, and the Deluxe Sport Van. All were passenger-friendly models with windows molded into the body, not cut out as was the method used the previous year. The 194 cubic inch inline 6 became standard equipment, while the high-torque 230 cubic inch 6, rated at 140 horsepower, was now optional. Naturally, the panel van continued production. Changes for 1966 included the addition of backup lights, the side emblems were moved forward and now mounted on the front doors, and the antenna location was moved from the right side to the left side front. Upgrades for the Sport Van included things like two-tone paint, cargo doors, chrome bumpers and horn ring, additional seating, interior paneling, and a padded dash. The 1967 through 70 vans were actually considered the second generation, but the many similarities to the first gen deserve to be briefly mentioned here. In 1967, the Chevrolet van received its normal 3-year cycle major facelift, which included a slightly curved windshield, moving the headlights down to a new redesigned grille, and larger rectangular taillights. 1967 was the only model year of the second gen that did not have side marker lights. The forward control cab design was retained, but the doghouse was lengthened, widened, and slightly relocated in order to fit an optional Chevrolet small block V8 engine. Engine cooling was improved with the addition of a larger cross-flow type radiator and a redesigned front that included a low-profile tunnel allowing for more fresh air to the radiator. The second generation vans were now available in either the 90-inch wheelbase half-ton or the new 108-inch wheelbase 3/4 ton. 1967 would also be the first year that corporate head General Motors Truck Division debuted their version of this top-selling van. The GMC versions were named the G1500 in the half-ton model and a G2500 in the 3/4 ton version. The vans were mostly geared towards the commercial end of the light truck market, while the bus captured a very minimal part of the personal use segment of this up-and-coming market. At Chevrolet, the most noteworthy addition to the G-Series lineup was the debut of the new G20. It was a 3/4 ton capacity vehicle featuring heavier duty suspension, a 12-bolt rear axle, and because of its increased cargo capacity, the wheels now had a 6-lug bolt pattern. Knowing that most of these vans would be sold to commercial customers, it was only available on the extended wheelbase version. The 230 cubic inch inline 6 was now standard, and a 250 cubic inch inline 6 and the new to the option list 283 2-barrel small block V8 all became options. Industry-wide, all brake systems now were of the dual reservoir design, and seat belts were now mandatory. Meanwhile, Ford Motor Company built its last first-gen Econoline models. In 1968 and later, they would focus on a full-sized conventional van and the F-Series trucks. 1968 models were slightly changed, the most obvious being the first year for side marker lights, also now mandated by the feds. The optional V8 engine this year was upgraded to a 307 cubic inch 2-barrel, producing 200 horsepower. A column-shifted Borg-Warner supplied 4-speed transmission was now available as an option, as well as power brakes on the G20s. For the 1969 model year, the 3-speed turbo-hydromatic 350 automatic transmission was an option, replacing the bulletproof 2-speed power glide. Another welcome addition to the option list was the new body-integrated air conditioning that was offered on all of the sport van models. This was not a typical AC setup with dash vents and controls, but a roof-mounted unit with a single blower duct that had an adjustable overhead louver to direct airflow. This AC unit was operated independently from the cabin heater. It was operated by a single knob on a roof control panel that turned on the unit and allowed the selection of fan speed. With no actual temperature control, the fan speed was the only way to adjust for the desired comfort level. The 1970 model year was the last year of the forward control design on both the Chevrolet and GMC vans. This was also the last year of the Dodge A series as well. The 250 cubic inch inline 6 producing 155 horsepower was now standard. In addition to the 307 cubic inch 2-barrel V8, a 350 cubic inch 4-barrel V8 producing 255 horsepower may have been available as an option for the first time in 1970. It's referenced in the owner's manual, but not mentioned in the dealer brochures, so its availability is unclear. The 3-speed automatic and manual 4-speed column shift continue to be available as transmission options. So ended the run on these wonderful cab-over vans and trucks. Like Ford, Chevrolet, GMC trucks, and Dodge would focus on their newly designed conventional full-size vans and pickup trucks. Thanks for watching this special edition video on If This Car Could Talk. We hope you've enjoyed it, and we'll leave a comment on your special memories of these G models from General Motors. Please be sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel. Watch for our normal schedule of vehicles featured every Sunday. This Sunday, we're showcasing a beautiful 1966 Corvette Roadster. See you then, and remember, please be careful out there.